Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about 3 ways to deal with a miserable husband. My guest Jamie and her fiance got engaged 2 years ago, but they were constantly fighting with name calling and cursing. And it felt like they just couldn't get along long enough to actually get to the marriage. Then she moved out and gave back the ring. But today, Jamie and her now husband are married and they are happy. They have a light, fun, peaceful relationship with a blended family. She's going to describe what she did so you can do it too. The Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award is about how to get your husband to appreciate your financial contributions to the household when you're a stay-at-home mom. But it makes your marriage a lot harder than it needs to be. All of that is coming up, but first, I'm going to share 3 ways to deal with a miserable husband. If your husband says he loves you but is unhappy, you may be dealing with a case of miserable husband syndrome. Okay, I just made that up. But you get the idea. Do you wish he'd help around the house, but no matter how nicely you ask, he's too busy binge watching Breaking Bad? Have you begged him to spend time with the kids, but he's still more interested in his phone than his own children? Or asked him to have sex or just spend time with you, period, but he'd rather work all hours than be with you? Maybe you've expressed how you feel and cried, and he's actually gotten angry and walked out. Talk about feeling abandoned. His lack of interest, consideration, and responsibility is so lonely and infuriating. If you're going through any of this, it's natural to wonder if you'd be better off without him. But then you remember that you'd really rather keep your family together. Or maybe just that you still love him and you don't want to be another divorce statistic. Whatever your reason, the good news is there's hope that things can improve. Here are 3 things you can do right now to bring back the cheerful man you fell in love with. Number 1, expect the best outcome. It's natural to want to figure out exactly what's wrong so you can fix it. Maybe you've noticed a pattern of specific triggers, like him getting into a mood when you bring up certain topics. Great. Now you can brainstorm ideas to help him work past it, right? Well, on second thought, I bet you've already tried gently suggesting, say, that he get checked out or get professional help or at least try some supplements. But your helpful suggestions have about the same impact as an umbrella in a hurricane. And that's because helpful in wife language translates to controlling in husband language. Not only was I clueless on that point, I just couldn't help myself because I was convinced I knew better than my husband. As good as it feels being right, there's something very unsexy about being a know-it-all. I felt more like his mom. And men don't want to have sex with their moms, which leads to even more disconnection in the marriage. If you're ready to change the helpful dance so he starts taking some initiative, what if you stopped? What if you instead gave him the space to figure it out on his own? When you're wanting things to change, preferably yesterday, just giving him space probably sounds scary, if not a terrible idea. But space is a powerful thing because it conveys the message that you expect the best outcome. When you expect the best, people have a way of rising to the occasion. If you do feel the urge to question him, criticize what he's been doing, or get into fix-it mode, here are 3 little words you can say instead that will totally switch things up. You ready? I hear you. I hear you. That's it. Just listening without agreeing or disagreeing is a big way to create emotional safety in a hurry. Number 2, relinquish control of the outcome. When Rachel's husband simply checked out as a husband and father, he claimed he was having a midlife crisis, but she was afraid she had married an alcoholic. When it was time for dinner, the kids' bath, and bedtime, he'd hightail it out the door to the bar. Or if he was home, he couldn't be bothered to lift a finger except to click the TV remote or a cigarette lighter or his fiercely guarded phone. Being a single mom while her husband lived the single life was not what Rachel had signed up for, and she told him she needed help. He agreed, and then he came home too drunk to follow through. When his only remedies were to follow his friend's suggestions to smoke pot for anxiety or take hallucinogenic mushrooms for a reset, Rachel was scared. She didn't know how things would ever get better. She did know one thing. She had no control over this man. She tried to manage his drinking, and it had only gotten worse, to the point of his blacking out in the arms of other women. Determined to keep her family intact, Rachel decided to try a new approach. She completely relinquished control of his lifestyle choices. Fear underlies control, always. So Rachel made a conscious decision to choose faith over fear. Getting out of the way had a profound impact. There was a lot more room for him to take the initiative to solve his own problem. The midlife crisis, or whatever it was, is long gone. These days, he's more interested in being her hero, even skipping his own plans to golf or to go out with friends so he can spend more time with the fam. Number 3, catch him doing something good. When Rachel was too scared to be able to see that outcome, it was very tempting to stay focused on the problem. But pointing out that he drank too much had not helped at all. On the contrary, the problem had only increased. This probably sounds familiar if your husband drinks too much. So Rachel decided to try something new. She shifted her focus from him having a problem and her own problems as a result to looking for opportunities to catch her husband doing something good. Every time he did anything to help out, whether it was spending 5 minutes with the kids or carrying just a single dish to the sink, she expressed her gratitude. She let him know how happy it made her. She made a list of everything she was grateful for about him, and she added to it daily to keep her gratitude mindset present for herself. The volume dial of her fears and complaints went way down. Not only did she feel the shift within herself, she saw something shift in her husband. He quit coming home drunk. Instead of going out, he chose to stay home to help out with bedtime and to watch a movie together. How would the atmosphere change at your house if you were vocal about how much you appreciate your man's efforts, his strengths? Is he a great handyman? Does he send your grandma flowers on her birthday? For an instant attitude adjustment, try making a list of everything you're thankful to him for, big and small. Shifting the dialogue to the positives does double duty. It refocuses your view and influences his perception of himself too. He'll be quick to want to please you even more. Now that you know 3 ways to bring back the man you fell in love with, which will you try first? If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest Jamie and her fiance got engaged 2 years ago, but they were constantly fighting with name calling and cursing. And it felt like they just couldn't get along long enough to actually get to the marriage. Then she moved out and gave back the ring. But today, Jamie and her now husband are married and they are happy. They have a light, fun, and peaceful relationship with a blended family. And she's going to tell us exactly how she did it so you can do it too. Jamie, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast show. It's such an honor to have you here. I really appreciate that you're coming on to share your story.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so happy to be here.
All right, let's start from the bad old days. What were things like?
So, I guess I should start with my previous relationship. I was married before, actually, for a short time. And that relationship was also filled with a lot of fighting, arguing, name calling, fear, disrespect. So when it happened again in my current relationship, I knew I could not just blame my husband or the guy. I knew I had to have a part in it because there was a pattern.
That's a hard moment, I think, right? To have that level of accountability where you say, "Oh, this is kind of familiar. This is what happened last time." So, how did you feel when you realized that?
Horrible. Like just my self-esteem, just yeah, it was hard to get happy
Right.
and just I didn't feel good about myself. I knew that was something I had to work on in my life, was getting along better and for longer periods of time, especially with men, and having like a more peaceful, happy relationship. So I knew it was a big goal of mine to do.
Yeah. And it must have seemed, I mean, I guess I'm thinking to myself, it must have seemed a little mysterious about how to do it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because I've seen, parents fighting and I've seen, disrespect. My family also, there's a lot of strong women and we stand up for ourselves and we get defensive and protect ourselves. But I was realizing this is not helping me. This is not helping me get to my goal of marriage.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
you were just doing what you'd seen modeled at home, just like we all do.
Yeah.
That's our
Hmm.
early training in relationships, and that's what you saw, and that's what you did.
Yeah.
And it's turning out to be pretty painful. It sounds like.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, what kinds of things? Well, okay. So, actually, let me let you continue then. So, I want to hear about what kinds of things you guys were fighting about.
Just if he would say something to me, like criticize me or something, I would answer back. Like if you would say, shut the refrigerator door, I would say, I know how to shut the door. Don't tell me what to do. Like my tone was just argumentative and disrespectful. And that would just make him angrier and um, just feel so disrespected and want to retaliate back. And it would just escalate, just little things. We have a blended family. So like I had fears, like if he were to spend time with his kids, he's not spending time with me, or is he going to be happier spending time with them more than me? And my fear would cause me to try to control things and that would cause arguments. So I think it was a combo of the fear and the disrespectful behavior on my part.
Yeah, and I think you're pointing to something I think is so common, which is feeling a little bit like in competition with his kids for his time and attention and affection. And
Mhm.
so, how was that playing out at your house?
Um, just it would cause so many arguments. So many arguments were about the kids, like even just my interactions with the kids. Like if I would text one of his daughters back and she didn't answer me like in the same amount of time that I would answer her, for example, I would get scared, like, oh, I take it personally and get hurt. Look how they're treating me. They're not treating me respectfully. Then I would say something to him and he would always be defensive, because he's a wonderful father, a loving father. And, no one wants to hear anything bad about their children, just like I don't. So he would get defensive and stick up for them. And then that would make me even more fearful, like, oh, he's sticking up for them. He's not even listening to me. And that would cause another argument with me and him. And then if he would say something to the daughter, it would cause bad feelings between me and the daughter. So I just didn't know how to handle all of this. And going to him was not helping. So, yeah.
Yeah. So did you? So this engagement, it was pretty up and down. It sounds like then you get along, and then it just kind of tank. Did you at any point think, okay, this marriage is just not going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of my family even said, "Oh, just be with yourself and your daughter." Why
Ouch.
get married if you're fighting
Oh,
all the time? And a lot of people just lost faith in us, and the only group of women that didn't was the Laura Doyle community, which was amazing. I got so much support, and just learned so much that thank God, like thanks to all of you, I'm married now. So yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I love that part. But there was in part of getting there was that you moved out and gave back the ring. And it sounds like you called off the engagement at one point.
Yeah, we had a really big breakdown in Florida, like a family vacation before, our marriage. And we fought a lot. And again, things that had to do with the kids. Like he said something to my daughter by the pool, and I felt like he was yelling at her. But then when we were cleaning up, he allowed his daughter to not help so much. And I got upset with that, and it caused a whole big fight. And then my daughter and I came home from the trip early, and he and I both knew like this is too much drama, and something had to change. I ended up moving out, and he was upset about it, but I think like deep down he agreed like maybe we need some kind of change. We can't get married like this or go on like this. Like we both loved each other, but something needed to really change. So
And you gave back the ring at that time also?
After I moved out, he was a gentleman and helped me, and whatever I needed in my new apartment, like he said he would help me. But we tried to still date, but I think I had so much resentment, like for so many. I put in like 6 years, my life into this relationship, and just wanting to be married, and I'm still not married after 6 years of dating, which is I thought is a long time. Like he still wanted to keep trying, but I just felt like how much more can we try? And I just at one point just gave up and gave back the ring and said like, let's date other people,
Oh gosh, it must have been a sad day. It must have been kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter even said like, I don't want you dating anyone else. I love him. I love all the kids.
Oh,
Like, I want you guys together. Like she was also around them, like him and the children for years. So she was calling him dad already, in addition to her biological dad.
wow. So there was a lot of that must have felt like pressure really to make it work.
Yeah.
Your daughter's sake too. I mean, at this point in the story, so you've moved out, you've given back the ring, your daughter wants it back, but you're feeling hopeless. I mean, how did it come back to life after this?
So we were both like, I think looking around, but I like didn't like anyone as much as him. I think just the time apart made me realize how much I loved him. And, I just deep down, I wanted to make it work. I reached out to Kathy, of course. Like, what
Master
do I
Coach Kathy
do?
Murray. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the coaches. And she put me on the 30-day challenge. She said, Jamie, you are, not at yourself. You have so much so much emotional turmoil, and you need to get happy. That is the first thing you need to do is get back to Jamie and get happy. So she emailed me your 30-day challenge. And I ran with that. I ran every day, 2-3 miles every day. I listened to podcasts, your podcast, read blogs. I went out with friends. I just took great care of myself and really dove into self-care and got into amazing shape, and just, kept my happiness level up. And then I kept in touch with Coach Kathy. And I did say, like, he emailed me he came to my daughter's birthday before, like, we broke up. And he sent me all these pictures, like, from her party and videos. And I never responded to it. And I remember saying to Coach Kathy, like, what do I, he sent me all these pictures. And she said, Jamie, what's his heart message there? Like that he wanted to make me happy and share pictures. And I didn't even open the the text message and he could see if I read it or not. And this was like 3 weeks later. And so I finally was able to receive it. And I said, thank you for sending me all the beautiful pictures and videos. And I said, thank you for being at her party. And thank you for taking all of these pictures for us. Like, they're amazing. And he said, you're welcome. It answered me back right away. And keep in mind, we didn't talk for weeks before this. So I was like, Coach Kathy's right once again.
It's pretty smart.
I felt like in the few weeks that we didn't talk after I moved out, I was not doing the skills. I was not until I resumed the 30-day challenge. I just was not, I kind of gave up. But once I started using the skills again, things started changing and improving.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you're saying you gave up, and I really hear, it sounds like you were just kind of tired, like now, and hopeless, but you didn't totally give up because you called Coach Kathy. Right. So that's definitely a proactive thing to do. And you were open. You were saying, what should I do? And she made a suggestion. You ran with it. So I feel like that's a big thing. But okay. So you were making yourself happy. You were in great shape. And then you received the gift of him sending those photos graciously. So those are some skills. So what happened? How did we get to like, I do from there?
Yep. So then I got back into coaching, to private coaching. And I'm a huge fan of your private coaching. I must say that really helped me a lot. Like, in addition to, I've read all your books. I've read so many blogs. I've listened to all your podcasts, but I really benefited from the private coaching. So, and I've had a few different coaches, and I must say they've all helped me like along the way. So I got back into private coaching. So the next thing we talked about in one of my sessions was apologizing for my disrespectful behavior in Florida. And my coach was very thorough, and she, helped me come to realizing I needed to apologize for several specific things. So I did that. He received it. Great. Thank you right away. Didn't even ignore me saying thank you. And then I heard from, like, we live 5 minutes away from each other, and he's always been close with my family. So I knew he was talking to my uncle, saying how much he missed me and my daughter. And I think we both loved each other. We wanted it to work. We just needed a change. We needed an improved way. So I had some hope from that because my uncle told me he's been talking to him. So then we started texting, and we agreed to meet and go out one night. And that felt like a first date when we went out. That was wonderful. And then he asked me if we could do some counseling together, actually. So I didn't, and I was doing my private coaching. So, my coach just said, receive all support, try it, receive it, be open. So I did, but I didn't really like it. He knew that.
But I love that idea that you would just, that was his thinking. Like, how can we make this work? Right. So he wanted some support around it, and you were open to it. So why didn't you like it? What didn't you like?
Well, I love the content was very similar to what you teach, but the format, I just felt like we were doing Zoom at the time because of COVID. So it was almost like, we go on and he's in his house, I'm in my apartment, and the therapist is there. And it's like, okay, what's wrong? It's like, focus on what's wrong. And I just felt like he would say his version, I would say my version, and then it would just cause an argument. And I kept telling him, we were fine all day. And then once we went on this Zoom thing, we argued, and we didn't argue all day. It was kind of digging up problems. So I agreed to do a few. I was trying to just keep my mouth shut and just be a good listener.
All right. I love it.
So we did a few, but I was continuing with my coaching. And then I just, I said vulnerably that I really don't want to do it anymore. Like we finally got to the point of setting a date. So then he's like, okay, if we're getting married anyway, we don't need to continue.
Oh, so you're just dropping all these little wisdom bombs about how you did things that really worked for you. And I just love it's like you use the counseling sessions to just practice being a good listener and to really hear him. And you had talked about heart messages, receiving his heart messages and things like that earlier. So I just hear, like the skills at work quite a bit here. So now you're married.
We're married.
So, okay, what is your relationship like now? What is your marriage like?
Well, we just got married recently, like about a few weeks ago, a month ago. It's great. Like we've all never gotten along better than we are now. Like just like the kids are so supportive and loving. And my husband and I now, we just get along much better. It's much easier, lighter, more fun, more connected, more peaceful. And it's a lot to do with my changes and my thinking and my speaking and my behavior, all three of those things because of the skills.
Well, let's hear some more about that. Like what's an example of how you think differently or behave differently?
Okay, so for my thinking, I've learned to see the good in everyone. Especially I've learned with the people closest to you in your life. That matters most. Like it's easy to see the good in, people a little bit farther away that you're not seeing or dealing with every day. But the people that are close to you, like my husband and his children, like pre-skills, I would complain or if something did one thing negative, I would say something to him. And again, it would cause that defensive, protective pattern on his part. So I've really learned just to focus on the good in them. Like, for example, if they would come over for dinner and they would make a cake or bring fruit, I would say, like, really focus. Wow, that was so nice of them, so thoughtful of them to bring something. Or they were loving to my daughter, focus on that. They actually came and gave me a hug and kiss, that they embraced me. Like every little thing, I would just really give energy to the good in them. And also like for him, like I would write gratitude lists about all the loving things my husband does each day, especially if I feel like negative feelings or fear coming up. I would say, oh, wow, he made the bed for me. He brought me coffee this morning. He sat with my daughter on the couch with his arm around her and read a book with her. He did his homework with her. He said, I love you. He said, how beautiful I am. Like just any little thing. And I just become such a more positive person. And the more I focused on the positive and beautiful things about his kids, I felt like I'm allowing myself to really love them, not to like have this like wall up, like they're his kids and my kids and, but it's really allowing me to blend better. And I'm really like falling in love with them, wow, this can work. We can become one family. Like, and it's fun. They've been like the last few weeks, they've been here every weekend for dinner and for lunches. And we've been playing games all together and having meals with no problems. And it's just, I can't wait for the next weekend with everyone. Like, it's just so much better now.
Wow, that is amazing. I love that you say you're falling in love with your step kids. It's kind of like the way you fell in love with your husband in a way, like that feeling of just joy and delight in their company, it sounds like. And I can just kind of see it. You're talking about them and describing all the sweet things they do. Like that sounds like that's really how you feel. So did that come naturally for you to start really just focusing on this? No.
No.
Okay.
No, like this is all like things I've learned along the way from private coaching, from reading your books, reading your blogs. No, like I really had to work hard. I think I had really bad habits before of like negative thinking and answering back and just fear, always being scared. Like if you would say like, oh, my ex, that bothered me that he would say my, I guess it's unbelievable, but would bother me that he said my ex, because it's like she belongs to him. But and I would have I would get triggered from that. Like I would say about my ex, just his name. I wouldn't put a my with it, like he belongs to me. But that's, so with learning the skills and implementing the skills, I would say, Jamie, he's a guy, like, okay, he said my ex. I don't need to react. Like I would ask myself the 4 fear questions. Like if he would say that and I would feel like an urge to want to say something to him or control him or to get scared, I would say, what am I afraid of? Oh, that he loves her more than me. And then I would say, the second one is my fear realistic? No, he's married to me. I know he doesn't, want to be with her anymore, and I'm like, oh, it's just like the negative thinking coming up. Like he's not going anywhere. He wants to be with me. And I know that I have all these lists of gratitude lists, why he loves me. And then I would say, can I actually control the situation? I can't force him to say things differently. Guys say things one way and women say things a different way. And the fourth one, is it worth the intimacy it would cost me? Absolutely not. I just forgot about it and just focus on all the beautiful things he does versus getting stuck on his wording. So I'm able to just be a little bit more thoughtful and pause and more, I guess, smarter in the way I'm thinking and then acting on my thoughts.
So this sounds like a huge change in perspectives, right? You just got those new glasses and put them on, and now you can see. And I love that you just went through those 4 fear questions. And by the way, if you're listening and you're like, what is that? Just rewind them. She said each one. And she asks herself those questions when she gets triggered, which I think is just a great example of something you can do in the moment when you're feeling that needless emotional turmoil, is bring yourself present to those questions and just to answer them. But that must have taken some doing to get yourself to start practicing that instead of just the reacting.
Yeah, I've been, I think, in the program for 3 years now, and I've had my ups and downs, but I must say, just with time and persistence, you get so much better at implementing the skills and all the tools that you teach, and it becomes more habitual and it gets easier. It gets easier.
Yeah.
If I must say, if I can do things differently, anybody can, because I was such a fighter. I was so a fiery, strong woman personality, and I've changed so much over the years.
I bet other people are noticing you're different too. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I think my family notices. Yeah, my brother said something to me. I use the skills with my mom. I've helped my husband's children because one's married and one has a fiance now. She just got engaged. So I've helped one of the twins deal with her future stepfather about staying off her fiance's paper, let him deal with his dad, teaching her positive SFPs for her fiance. Oh, you know how to handle your dad. You're so smart. You got this. Things like that. Because she would get involved sometimes, with just disagreements between her fiance and his dad, and it would cause a whole problem. So she was really grateful and said that really helped her. But my mom, worries a lot. So she would send me long texts about getting the 3rd booster. When are we getting the 3rd booster shot? Or if we have a wedding coming up, in another state, to drive there and not to be on the bus with many people, just all the things she's worried about and trying to control me. So I would just say, Mom, I hear you. Thanks for always being so trusting. And she would answer, okay, good. And that would be it. And years ago, before the skills, I would be like, why are you telling me what to do? And I would get so I would get triggered. I would react. I would say something just complain or fight back. And it would be a whole mess. But now I know how to handle her. Wow. And she listens.
So your relationship with your mom has transformed, it sounds like.
Yeah, my dad's jokes around and says we're best friends. And I've had a volatile relationship with her in the past like so much fighting also. And now he says, like,
Wow.
he's like your best friend now.
Wow. And I want to break that down because again, you're just dropping all these great, how examples of how you implemented the skills really effectively. So your mom would say something that kind of like maybe felt like an ouch, like she's telling you what to do. You don't want to be controlled. And you responded, and it sounds like you used like a mom fulfilling prophecy of, well, first you listened, right? You said, I hear you, right? So there was no argument, just like giving you the airtime. And then what was your mom fulfilling prophecy? Like, thanks for
Thank you
being
for always being so trusting.
trusting. And that's what you wanted to experience, but maybe didn't feel like you were experiencing so much in that moment. So that was a big stretch, probably to even say.
Yeah. He was being so controlling.
Right. So you were saying the opposite of what felt to be true. And so why did you do that? Why would you say the opposite? Did that feel like a lie?
A little bit, yeah. But I've said it to her before every time she tries to be controlling. So why would I do that? Okay, so because I've learned from your program, so what you focus on increases, or what you want to manifest in your life is what you should focus on. So if I would say, "Oh, you're so controlling," I would experience more of her controlling ways, which is not going to help or serve me. We say so. I wanted to say something that will help me, or will say something that I want to manifest in my life. Like, you're so trusting, you're so easygoing, you're so understanding, because that's what I want to experience. So that's a totally different way of thinking. I did not do that before coming into this program.
Yeah, I love it. And what is it you experience with her now? Because she's like your bestie, you're saying. So do you experience her being trusting? Does that feel true now?
Well, she backed off after I said that. She just said, okay, good. And that was it. She didn't go on and on about it. I guess she'll just like give me the space to decide like if and when I would get a third shot. Like, she just let it go. And we were there yesterday for like a brunch. My husband and I and my daughter and my like relatives were there, and she didn't say one word about it. We just had a great time. She sent us an amazing text this morning, how she loved every minute of being with us. And it's just so much nicer with everyone.
Wow.
Using
I
this
love it. And we could call that evidence that she trusts you. She didn't bring it up again because she's not worried about it, because she trusts you, maybe, right? So you are experiencing what you focused on, Jamie. Yeah. I love it. Okay. So first of all, I want to get your tips. And you've touched on so many things, but I think I'm so inspired by what you describe about your blended family, how you've fallen in love with your stepkids. It sounds like they love you too, right? They come and hug and kiss you when they come over. So let's say, so there's a woman who's listening, who's maybe having conflict around the blended family issue, or even feeling jealous, right? As any mere mortal woman might feel jealous about her husband's kids, maybe feeling like they're a higher priority than she is, or just being jealous of his time that he spends with them. And wanting to get to what you described, where the family, like everyone's getting along, the stepkids are getting along, and you're getting along with your mom. And where should she start? What's your best tip for her?
Okay, so I guess first self-care, because it's really hard to be great at the other skills without first making yourself happy and feeling good and calm. So I would say self-care. The second thing is learning about the concept of staying on your own paper, staying off his paper with his children, like not getting involved with that. Let him do what he chooses to do. I guess that's relinquishing control. Like, his children, biological children, are on his paper. So that's his decisions and his responsibilities when he wants to see them, what he wants to do with them. That's all his paper. So I've learned to stay off his paper and let him decide that. So if he says like, oh, I'm going to go to Rebecca's basketball game tonight, great. Whatever you think, sounds good. If he invites me, great, I'll go. If not, that's okay. But, maybe before the skills, I would argue with him or something. So staying off his paper and staying on your own paper. So that also means scheduling self-care every day, keeping, your schedule busy, keeping yourself happy. So those two, and then just gratitude about the children, like listing all the beautiful and wonderful things about them and studying them and reviewing them. And really, it's scary, because it's like you're opening yourself up and, to embracing them like your own. But ultimately, you'll have a better life that way. I think you'll be happier. So really focusing on just the beautiful things about them, just like you would do with your own children. You don't want to focus on the bad things with your own children. You want to, like, everyone, wants to look at their kids as wonderful and beautiful and amazing. And that's to our benefit. That's how we should focus on, your spouse's children, because they'll treat you better as well. When you're kind to them, it's like a mirror effect. They're going to be kind and loving to you. And they can feel it. Like if you're, not focusing on the beautiful things or saying something to him, it causes so much negative energy. So
even if you're not saying those things in front of them, you're saying the energy kind of permeates the environment and they pick up on it. And this is, and it comes out in the tone of your voice or the look on your face or, so that sounds great. I love those specific ideas about how to make a peaceful home with a blended family. Now, what about though, when your husband is interacting with your daughter?
Well, most of the time he's wonderful. Like he actually was my example. He helped me realize how I should be too, because he's always been so loving and amazing to my daughter that on her own will, she calls him dad. Like she'll tell people I have two dads. And this happened even before we were married. I mean, she is a lot younger than his children. So, it's a little bit easier, but he was always loving and wonderful to her, like just like he is to his children, despite my behavior, which now, like I have so much more gratitude for. Like, even though I had, issues with his kids in the past, he was always loving to her. I mean, sometimes he would be like a little forceful or yell or punish her. And I think pre-skills, maybe I would say something to him, like, you can't talk to her like that or stick up for her. But now I have so much more faith, like in how much he loves her and an understanding of how much like he needs like to be respected, how important that is, that I just kind of stay out of it and I'll just let him parent her or discipline her. Cause I know like he wants the best for her.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Beautiful. It sounds like you really do respect your husband so much. And he's even influenced the way you show up as a stepmom to his kids because you liked what you saw so much. And it sounds like when you think about interfering with maybe something he said to your daughter, it's like touching a hot stove. Like you just wouldn't do that because you're just going to get burned. It sounds like it's just going to be bad for you and for everybody. And that really has kept you just being supportive of their interactions. It sounds like, even if you don't agree, even if you're thinking he's being too harsh, or how does that go?
Yeah, just walk into a different room, or if I needed to say something to him, maybe just like talk about it privately and not in front of them. But just put the duct tape on and just like think in my head, like he loves her, like he's just handling her in his own way. Really try just to stay out of it. It doesn't really blow up anymore like it did before,
Yeah. So it's kind of a self-reinforcing decision to stay out of it. It sounds like, because that, and you have somewhere to go, which is to remind yourself of the evidence you have that he really loves her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. What do you think you would say to Jamie if you could travel back in time? I don't know which time actually you'd go to, but I mean, yeah, let's hear. What would you say to her that you know now that you just would like to tell her?
That I didn't need to like add or take anything away from me. I just needed to learn to do things differently and just improve the way I do things. Like I just needed to learn new habits and new ways. because whatever I was doing in the past wasn't helping me. It was the same bad pattern, fighting and just not having fun and being miserable. I just needed a new way. That's all. It wasn't taking anything away from me, just changing things up. And which practice and persistence is not so bad. It's just like learning something new, like a new subject or something, just learning to do things differently. And I just needed the right information. I needed the right support group and the right community. And I would say it is possible. Like people say people don't change, but that's not true. I'm very different now than I was 3 years ago. I think differently. I speak more calmly. I respond differently. I behave more dignified and I'm happier and just more grateful. I'm learning to be more vulnerable. So things can improve. You just have to change and improve the ways you do things.
Wow. Jamie, this just seems like such a huge accomplishment. These changes you're describing. I mean, and who doesn't want that, right? To feel like they're responding more calmly and with more dignity. And I love the part where you say I didn't have to add or subtract anything from Jamie. Like you're still Jamie, but you just have this different skill set. You have a different set of habits from what you had. So it wasn't like you weren't bad and wrong, but you didn't need to, and I think that sometimes, or you didn't have to shrink yourself or make yourself less than who you are, which I think can be a fear coming in and kind of learning the skills. It's like, wait, when am I going to get to express myself or really say what's on my mind? And so you're a great example of somebody who had a lot to say. You were very expressed, right? Previously. And in some ways it wasn't serving you. Do you ever feel like, oh, I don't get to express myself now? Do you ever feel like you had to shrink yourself down in some way or be small, be quiet?
No. I feel so much more confident and dignified. And I feel so much better about myself now. I just feel like the way I was acting before just was undignified and so reactive and defensive and made me feel bad about myself. So no, like I love that he could say all this stuff and I could just say, I hear you, babe. Or just say, yeah, whatever you think, you've got it. I trust you. Like, I feel so beautiful and confident. Like, I just feel so much more like in control of my life and on top of the world, like just so much happier this way. So no, not at all. I love speaking less, and the way he treats me is so different now, like better than what it was like before. So yeah, no, I just feel so much more calmer and dignified. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I love it, Jamie. It is just, it's been a joy to witness your journey. I got to know you a little bit as you were studying on our campus, and it's just been an honor and a thrill to see all that you've done and what you've created. I saw the beautiful picture of your family, your blended family after the wedding. Everyone looked really happy. And, we're getting the backstory on how you created that. And I just give you all the credit for creating that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your help. And to all the coaches that have helped me. I think I've worked with at least 4 coaches. So they've all been amazing. So much to teach and so much to learn. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. This is great to hear. We do have terrific coaches on the campus. And I'm glad to hear that is part of what helped you get the inspiring story that you have now. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us about it.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that's making me apoplectic this week was sent to me by one of our coach trainees. And she writes, wow, wow, and wow. This seems like pretty awful advice to a very common challenge. And I couldn't agree with her more. This advice is from a psychotherapist, and it appeared in a major publication. So you might get the mistaken impression that it's trustworthy. But wait till you hear how harebrained it is. So here's my anonymous shout out to you for sending me this worst relationship advice winner, because it definitely takes the cake. Thanks for making this valuable contribution to the show by sending in this claptrap. I'm so grateful. The gibberish is in response to a question from a wife who has written in saying, I'm a stay-at-home mom and my husband doesn't appreciate my financial contributions to our household. This leads to all kinds of problems in our relationship, mostly surrounding division of labor. How do I get him to understand that although I don't bring home a paycheck, my financial contributions to our household matter? And the advice she gets in response to this, you won't believe. The so-called expert says, quote, write out a list of all the unpaid labor you do, and then research how much it would cost to outsource that work. She calls this negotiating from a place of worth. I just can imagine the delightful conversation that is going to result from her going through that exercise. First, she can get even more resentful and angry as she adds up how much it would cost to outsource the carpool duties and the laundry and the cooking. And then she can bring that delightful tone to the conversation where she presents a total to her husband, proving to him that she brings even more value to the family than he does with his paycheck, maybe, possibly. Because that was likely the problem, that he did not realize she was doing so much and how much it's saving him. And once he sees that Excel spreadsheet with that tally of all her contributions, it won't cause a huge fight. No, it's going to make him jump off the couch and start a load of laundry with a big smile so he can pull his weight equally. Because that's what motivates husbands. That's just human nature. He doesn't understand her true value now, but once he sees those numbers, he will definitely want to do a lot more. And then the division of labor at their house will finally become fair. It'll be equitable. Oh, this advice it makes me so mad. I want to take a bataka stick and beat the psychotherapist's chair into little splinters. If what this wife wants is to feel appreciated and get some help with the chores, a lot of help, it is so ridiculously unhelpful to take this approach. And poor thing, she already sounds pretty exhausted and overwhelmed. If she would also like to preserve the precious intimacy in her marriage, well, it's all going to go kablooey the minute she goes down this old dirt road, which could make her feel even more hopeless and exhausted and overwhelmed and alone with all the household responsibilities. And then, because she followed the expert's advice and just ended up with a huge fight, she may start to think there's something really wrong with her husband. Well, instead of wasting all that time and having all that needless emotional turmoil, I'd love to hear her flip those complaints into desires. Is it that she wants to sleep in during morning carpool? Is it that she wishes the week's groceries were already in the refrigerator? Is it that she wants the laundry all folded and put away? Because if she knew what she wanted and expressed those desires in a way that inspired her husband, then he would have a chance to be her hero by giving her what she wants. Just knowing she's unhappy and that she doesn't think he's doing anything to help around the house, well, it's pretty hard for him to know what to do to fix the situation, except maybe to try to defend himself from her criticism. She could give him the opportunity to delight her, as we see husbands doing again and again on our campus when women get clear on their desires and they express them cleanly, meaning without expectation or control. Then she could express her gratitude and happiness about what he did to delight her, which could even inspire him to do it again next time, because husbands love knowing they've made their wives happy. And then 20 years later, she could brag about how she never does the dishes because her husband does them, because he knows it makes her happy, like I'm doing right now. But doubling down on the criticism and the complaining, the one-upsmanship by making an accounting of your monetary value for chores, well, that's never going to get you to feeling desired, taken care of, and special. For those reasons, the advice to write out a list of all the unpaid labor you do and then research how much it would cost to outsource that work so you're negotiating from a place of worth is the very, very, very worst relationship advice I have heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll share how you can join the 5-day Adored Wife Challenge for free. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I went to the eye doctor, and it turns out the biggest problem I have is that I complain too much about having to wear reading glasses.